a stop.
My goodness, what a save.
What a save. What a glove save there.
What a stop. Looked like a sure goal.
You talk about an A-plus save and maybe the save of the night.
Welcome to the Goalie Science Podcast, the podcast where we try to bridge the gap between goaltending science and peak performance. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Phillips, a physical therapist and goalie performance specialist. I'm joined as always by Dr. Ben Cernick. Whether you're at home, at the rink, or in the car, grab a cup of your favorite beverage and let's drop the puck on this week's episode.
Jamie, we are recording on September 1st, and do you know what that means?
The hockey season's going to start?
It's hockey season, Labor Day, people are at their cottages, I guess, whatever, where they are on the long weekend. But what September 1st for me means hockey season starts. People are watching college football. I am not.
No, we are actually working all weekend. There are no off days for us.
And that's okay because it's hockey season and I am thrilled. Summer is great. I love summer training. But admittedly, I love hockey season. So here we are.
Here we are.
But before we talk about positive things, Jamie.
Yes.
What's on your mind to start this episode? What do you got?
There's a lot of things. So, Ben, as you and I talked about, I've really promoted it, but I was named goalie development coordinator for the state of Michigan, which is pretty cool. Which means I get to coordinate goalies and their development
in the state of Michigan.
In the state of Michigan. But we actually had a tournament this past weekend. Two weekends ago, we had a tournament already. So starting off hot. And I went as director of goaltending for Fox. I went to watch our goalies to see how we were doing. They did well, which I like to see. However, I think for me, like one of the hills I'm going to die on, and like I said in our pre-show chat, my little Alamo here, where I'm just going to go to battle is the pegs.
Culturally insensitive.
I don't know. Is the pegs in the net?
You mean the dull metal pegs where you like lightly T-push into them and they just explode off?
In the games that I was watching, I think that if I had to make a rough average, I would say between the both teams, the nets probably came off around 12 plus times. And it was so painful because it kills the play, especially when there's a battle. Like that's when goals go in.
Mm-hmm.
That's when goals go in. And so it's slowing down the game. It's killing the play. It also doesn't help for the goalies because if we think about just goaltending as a whole, it is progressing, it's evolving. And one of the big things that has evolved with it is how much we rely on our post for movements and save execution. So I talked with the owners of Fox Motors, and one thing we are going to do is we are going to purchase quality third-party pegs that are going to be used for just at the rink for practices and games so that our goalies and the development model that I'm starting to implement, the things that we use, we can actually practice them effectively because, I made a post teaching the RVH to one of my college girl goalies, and a lot of the comments were like, well, this is fine, but our post we can't do this on our posts. I was like, yeah, I guess so. Like if you can't hinge because your post come off, then it's a whole save selection and execution that's gone down the drain. So to be able to essentially practice what you preach and be able to do the things that we want and implement in the game, and also just keep the game flow consistent and nice and not have to go the net constantly. And I'm also going to champion this. I'm going to take that position with USA Hockey that I have, and I really want to champion that. And I know it's almost definitely a rink by rink basis because they're the ones responsible for the cost. But I want to do something and make sure that it becomes the standard of goaltending and the nets. And so kids don't have to bring their own nets or their own pegs, and those kind of things, because it was very frustrating as a fan point of view and as the goalie guy at Fox, to see that, because it sucked.
Yeah.
It sucked. It ruined the game. And actually one goal did. In one of there was a couple of goals that were not counted because the net was off. Yeah. It's like, come on.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think that's bad. I have a question for you, follow-up. How are you handling the allegations that you're siphoning money from the Honey Baked to Fox Sports? How does that?
From Honey Pig to Fox Sports.
Am I either of those names right?
Am I on the Fox News? I wish I was siphoning money. I could use some. If you are a large company corporation and would like to sponsor a AAA hockey organization, please reach out. I got one, and we need some pegs. So, that would let me know. We'll figure something out.
Yeah, I know that some of the peg and discussion. Wow, crazy that this is actually something that we have regularly discussed around. I know that some of the statements from organizations in North America is that like it's a safety thing, except that they don't want the nope. That let me finish. They except for the fact that it's like a good quality peg is not unsafe because it still bends. It just goes back to its spot. It still is force absorbing, right? It's not like you're just going to run into hit a brick wall.
Yeah, exactly. And and
it's also like the boards are there. Like you already slam into those things. Like how much?
And there is no rule with MAHA, so Michigan Amateur Hockey Association, against the pegs or anything. So you can use whatever. So I have done my due diligence. This isn't me coming in guns a-blazing, although I did come in guns a-blazing.
So hot.
But yeah, no, I think it's good, and hopefully this becomes the new norm or the new standard. And I think the only downside that I see is that I just don't want someone to take the pigs, because that would suck. Because then that's money down the drain. So I could see that being an issue. But if most rinks have good quality pegs, the need to take the pegs are gone. And the pegs we're looking at right now, I'm not going to shout them out until they respond to my email, are $115 a set. So
$115
a set, which isn't much. But if every month 1 or 2 sets of pegs are being stolen, that adds up, because whose budget does that come out of?
I'd like to point out that I also did my due diligence, and that the standard awful metal pegs that we see in rinks are $36 a pair, and no one steals those.
I wonder why they don't steal them, though.
Is it because they're terrible?
Is it because it might be because they're terrible?
So what are you doing with pegs? Like, anyways, Jamie, I'm done with pegs. If you are a organization that wants to sponsor Fox Motorsports
and this podcast,
you can reach out to Jamie Phillips. Unlike other companies, he answers his emails sometimes. Jamie, you sent me something earlier this week, and I was prepared to be upset about it. It is a video. The video put out by the Sports Network, TSN. It's on YouTube now. You can watch it out, and we'll make sure we link it in the show notes. It's titled "Our Great Canadian Goalies Going Extinct." All capital letters, by the way. So they're yelling it at us.
No exclamation mark, though.
No. So, only half yelling. We did a bit of a podcast episode about this like a year and a half ago, I think 2022, one of our earlier ones.
Okay.
And that discussion actually led to some research that I did surrounding Canadian goaltenders, which you can find some of that research on the internet. But basically, the video is actually a really interesting watch. I was going into it prepared to be like really unimpressed at the arguments that they're making. And instead, I just kind of sat there nodding and being like, yeah, I think that's a totally reasonable take to have on the current state of goaltending in Canada as it pertains to goalies at the national hockey level. So, Jamie, I'm going to toss it to you. What was your first piece that you want to talk about in the video? Because there's actually like 3 or 4 distinct points that I think are worth covering.
I think the first one, I'm curious to know who at TSN was like the main author and did the research on that, because they did a very good job.
Yep.
And I like that it was very multifaceted. In the past, we've seen a lot of the arguments haven't really held water, or they've been very emotionally charged, or it's been something. But they did investigate into a lot of the different things. And I think the one that stood out to me is they did a brief, but yet they did it, comparison of kind of the top 4 or 5 countries in hockey, and just the sort of the rough development model they had with goaltending, where they talked about Swedish Hockey Federation, Finnish hockey, USA hockey, and then obviously we don't really know for sure what goes on in Russia, because they're pretty hush-hush about what they do.
Stuff happens.
Yeah, stuff happens. But one of the big underlying factors is all those organizations, or all those organizations, national sporting organizations, and they invest heavily in the development of their goalies along with their other players. When we look at Hockey Canada, we're not going to get into the politics of Hockey Canada, although it does seem that they're complicated. They're complicated, and it's becoming more and more complicated. They're like their oversight over leagues and stuff is diminishing because teams and entire leagues are becoming independent that were once governed by Hockey Canada, and that's making things very confusing. But even when Hockey Canada a couple of years ago was still the big overseer, there wasn't any systems, and we've talked about there's no barrier to entry. If you're a coach in Canada, you don't have to be Hockey Canada certified. You don't have to be in the United States, but now being in the stateside of things, I was just named this position, but there's a lot more of an effort being put out.
I think you need to asterisk that comment. There is absolutely necessity to be certified when you are responsible for Hockey Canada teams. Let's make
I guess to coach a goalie.
To privately deliver coaching services. I think that's a really important delineation. Right? Like Hockey Canada puts on a number of education clinics across a wide variety of topics. So like let's be like very clear with the fact that they are doing that. Like people aren't just walking off the street and they're like, heck yeah, I'm the 14U double B coach now. Like there's steps they guys go through. Now,
however, private goaltending rules the roost when it comes to goalie development here in the States as well.
Correct.
Because it's not finance. Well, the finances haven't been allocated for organizations to have full-time goalie people.
Right. And I think, and there's a number of reasons for that. I think this is where maybe the biggest crux is. It's like you said, they talk about the different goaltending systems. And I don't think this is unfamiliar to anyone. So, this shouldn't be familiar. Is that when you look at a place like, for example, so I'm starting to be much, much more familiar with the Swedish Ice Hockey Federation and the systems that they have in place. And they do, like, again, they've started a number of initiatives which are like incredibly forward thinking and progressive in the sense of trying to be the leaders in how they provide education and research-based education to their coaching. And again, I think they do a really nice job of it. But like it starts at a young age, right? Like the system in Sweden is so different. If you go to a 10U game in Canada from the US, Jamie, what are you watching 10U? It's 5-on-5 full ice adult nets.
Yeah.
Right? That is the adult game talking for people in grade 4. Right? Mm-hmm. That's what it is. There's no hitting, so there's no contact. So it's, that's a safety issue, but it's a completely different game. So it's wholly unsurprising that it's a completely different system. But because, again, we have this, like, again, you grew up with it. I grew up with it. I played 8U. We don't have it anymore, but I played 9U AAA as a forward back in the day. No big deal. AAA forward, then AAA goalie. How did they do it? But we used to drive to Windsor, which from Hamilton, where I grew up, was 3.5 hours. And we would drive 3.5 hours to play one game.
Or for you to back up.
Yeah, or for the other goalie to back up and then drive home. And like that, I think you don't even need to really talk about like, does an organization have a full-time goalie development person? Because that is actually like 3 steps beyond the basic fundamental issue at hand there, which is that's crazy that we're doing that to 8, 9, 10-year-olds driving 3.5 hours for a game on a weekend. But you're right. There's no consistent goaltending development. It's all privately organized. We work with a number of systems, a number of organizations. Meyer, we're a third-party provider to teams. I'm a certified Hockey Canada third-party provider for services. Like that's what I do. I probably worked with 50 different teams across a dozen organizations, and some goalies I got to work with, a dozen times last year and felt that we made a lot of really good progress. And sometimes I saw them 3 times throughout the season. Right. So There's no consistency. There's no, I live it every day. So do you?
There's no consistency. I think one thing that I'm trying to do is add some consistency inside of our organization. That's how it has to start. it's one of those. I don't know. We get we go back and forth. We think we and I are both the same opinion. We would like the governing bodies to have it in North America to have a little bit more push and oversight. But again, a lot of it does come down to finances, and that was a big thing that was talked about in the video. Is just the overall cost of hockey, and it's expensive all throughout North America. Now you have to understand that it's always been an expensive sport, and now it's becoming more and more and more expensive. And being a goalie is the most expensive of positions of an expensive sport, and that is true. And the Hockey Canada's numbers are dwindling,
5% down since 2013,
which is a lot. And also,
there's
in U.S.
that play,
tons
of hockey's
tons. But USA Hockey,
growing.
One of the major reasons is growing, and it's every region's growing. And if you increase the number of athletes, you're going to increase the number of outliers, and by outliers we say NHL players, and that's why USA Hockey is getting close. And people would argue that it is currently outpaced, but it's getting close to that standard that was Hockey Canada.
I think there's one thing to I think you made a really nice point there with the outliers. I want to go back to the finance piece. I think that's one of the biggest things that everyone's going to always talk about. And you made a comment saying we should look at the comment section on the YouTube video. And I did a quick browse and most of it was about finances. So I do want to go back to that. But I do find it the outlier examples are really, really interesting. Let's look at the projected Four Nations Cup USA team for the goaltending. It's Connor Hellebuck, who had an atypical development pathway for professional goaltenders. Right, he was a Michigan high school goaltender before going to the NAHL, where he was drafted as a draft year +1. He wasn't in his first eligible draft year, right? He's atypical. The other example is Jeremy Swimmen. Swimmen's from Alaska. I don't think we're going to sit here and say that the Alaska development model mimics anything that we would expect. I'm wholly unfamiliar with what goes on there. So, there's 2 Division I programs in Fairbanks and Anchorage, right? It's a small population size. It's hard, again, to talk about what's your availability of playing other teams, right? If you're in Alaska, again, someone who is part of the Alaska Hockey Federation, reach out. We'd love to have you on to hear more about how Alaska Hockey's pacing things out. But I think those are what outliers look like. They're people who follow atypical pathways, right? And so there are these. And again, I think I really do think the USA hockey system is good in a lot of ways. I think the NTDP, the National Development Program, 17U, 18U model, centralizing the best players in one place for controlled development is the best model for young athletes. I think hands down, that is the right thing to do, given the nature of a country the size of the U.S. So I think there's a lot of great stuff. But again, you look at the examples of the Four Nations Cup goalies, and it's neither of them went through that system, right? That's kind of funny to think about too. Now, on the other hand, you have someone like Jake Ottinger who did go through that system, who is thriving. And you have someone like Thatcher Demko, who, again, is from California originally. Now, California had a really big hockey surge in the 90s. And to this day, actually, they're still doing really well. So,
and again,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, going to some of the counter arguments to things is, I think it's important for us to take a look at what do we consider an elite goalie, or the great goalies. If you look at the last 4 Stanley Cup finals, there's been a Canadian goalie in each one of those.
Yeah, I think
and there's a lot of Canadian goalies in the NHL. It's just none of them have a prestige or this aura of them that Price, Luongo, Brodeur had. Now, and so is it just a bias that we have that isn't represented by actual data or performance?
I mean, it's just I don't know. Again, I don't think it's. Yeah, let's table the finances and come back to that again. I do want to talk about it, but the video, you kind of alluded to that. The video points out that for a long time, in the Canadian goaltending mecca was in Quebec. Now, again, I'm fine sitting here going, yeah, we can probably credit Francois Allaire with a lot of that 20 years ago. I don't think that's. I think that's the easiest thing to do. That he was a pioneer in goaltending 25 years ago and 20 years ago. And again, he's still obviously involved in the professional game now. Right. But like, I don't like, he was a revolutionary, like literally the block. It's like hockey companies made pads tailored to the way that he coached. I think that's how influential that role was for him. And so, other places have learned and they've caught up and they've put resources into the development and they've used science to surpass and to make systems better. It's also, again, like partly a geography thing, like Canada and the US are massive. Yeah. Massive geographical spaces. And so you look at, again, a country like Sweden, which is a small population size, small geography size. They are very open about saying that they want to maximize their resources, maximize people who stay in hockey the longest, right? We push people at hockey immediately, right? We make it super expensive. If you want to be on the best team, you go, like, again, I've made this rant before, but I think it's worth bringing up. Hopefully I don't get fired. Hopefully I don't lose contracts for us. But like the way youth hockey development is shaping up in Ontario right now is that if you don't play in like that little kid outlaw league, like if you're not already outside of Hockey Canada, you're having a real hard time making the AAA team at New 10 because you didn't play for the right free Hockey Canada team. And I actually, like, if we think that's going to fix the issue, like, I don't know, man. Like,
and I guess I don't mean this as a hot take. This is like an honest to goodness, serious question. So with your experience in Swedish Hockey Federation and a little bit that I have with the different leagues in Europe, one of the main differences is because, with the clubs in Europe oversee the development. So
and the organization oversees the club.
And there's like regular. And so there's regular structure in meetings, which was the point I was going to make, talking about one of Craig Button's points. But is not the problem, but is a major problem for North America, is that parents are too much of an influencing factor over the decision making and the development of kids, like you just said. If you don't play in the Outlaw League, you're not going to be, or for example, you're not going to make this AAA team or that AAA team. Well, those are parents making those decisions. Right. That's not Hockey Canada. That's not this organization. That's not the Toronto Maple Leafs who oversee this team and that team and that team, like it would be in Europe with this team like HIFK Helsinki overseeing this. Mm-hmm. So is a lot of it the parents kind of making it unnecessarily difficult for some athletes or a large chunk of the athletes?
I don't know. Maybe like
it's a hard thing, and I know we're not here to like attack parents, but like because we know, and everyone is going to throw politics, and politics exists some degree to a high degree, sometimes to a high degree, and sometimes to a low degree. But with all these different nuances, where it's if you don't do this, so you don't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. To me, it seems like it's pushing kids out, and we already know that Hockey Canada and U.S. Hockey to a degree are not structured in a way to build up those kind of the weaker links and build them up so that maybe they turn into prospects down the line. Mm-hmm. I just think that maybe some of the parental influencing factors are more of a factor than we might give them credit for.
I think it's a huge thing, right? Kids learn behaviors from role models, right? Like that's basic science from everything from like how to walk, how to speak, mannerisms, right? That's like literally just sociology and human development 101, mm-hmm. Right? We tell kids AAA matters, so kids think AAA matters, right? Like it's really that simple. Like, you know what I mean? I think of this one goalie we have, and he's like a really funny kid, like 9. And maybe I don't really actually know. And I think he made like the A or AA instead of AAA. And, his folks have talked to me a couple times about it. And I'm always like, it's part of the process. And there's lots of good goalies at every age group. And, sometimes it's the way it goes and it's tough. And but like the kid just comes out and like has like so much fun and just like loves making saves and has never once talked to me at all. And again, he's a little guy, so I'm not expecting him to talk to me, but it's like never once talked to me at all about like tryouts or where he's playing or what level he's playing at. You know what I mean? His biggest concern is if he can make a windmill glove save on me every single day.
So you always shoot low blocker.
Yeah. So I step in and I immediately put it off his forehead. Right? Like, you know what I mean? It's in, that's the conversation that I have with the parents. And the conversation I have with the kids is like, I'm going to rob you. And it's like, yeah, I hope so. It's really fun when a little kid does a little windmill after they catch the puck. I think it makes me laugh every time. So I think it is, again, it's structure, it's societal that we've set it up. And I think we've said this a number of times. And I get booed. I think people are probably booing right now, where I would say that I would love nothing more. I would love absolutely nothing more if we made 10 and 11-year-olds play cross ice hockey. I would love nothing more.
I also agree with that.
If we made the farthest distance an 11-year-old has to travel 30 minutes for hockey when they live in the densest part of and again, I'm speaking from an Ontario perspective.
Yeah.
So, right. But you know what I mean? Like, I'd love for the farthest distance necessary is just the town over. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, it doesn't need to be that serious. It can still be competitive, right? Like, again, if people want to spend the money, Swedish Hockey broadcasts, has a broadcasting service for all their clubs from, 10U up to this SHL. And so you can pay and go watch how much fun those kids are having. I've sent Jamie a couple clips. I watched a little guy get 2 breakaways back to back in like a 9-second stretch, one of which went between the legs top corner. He's like 9. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that little player is hurting by playing cross ice hockey. I think that person has an equal chance of turning into a great adult hockey player if they were playing, right? Like, it's definitely not hurting. So yeah, I think the apprehension and the way directionality we've seen of minor hockey is parent driven, because parents are the ones a lot of the time who are with organizations who are volunteer coaching, because we need volunteer coaches in North America to operate, especially at the younger ages. And so, yeah, the systems we built are the systems that adults decide, and that influences kids. And so is that one of the barriers to Canadian hockey development going downhill for our goalies that were born in the 2000s now, or younger goalies? Absolutely. 100%. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that Craig Button said, where he basically, to paraphrase, he said that in Canada, because they're talking to the Canadians, he didn't say there's too many goalie coaches, but we are overcoaching our goalies.
Yeah, he's exactly what he said, actually.
Yeah, and he's actually, I think I have the quote here. Good pause. They're locked in too much time in the technique, rather than trying to build an all-around goaltender. That one, I don't love that, because that's such a broad statement. Because I do get that sometimes all coaches tend to overcoach. We do. Yeah, but that's in every sport, every position, all the time, where we just want the best for our athletes. Now, it's funny because we think about, okay, in this Craig Butt's point here is that we're overcoaching, creating, let's just say, for example, drill goalies, not game goalies. Mm-hmm. We also are very against small area games. Practice structure hasn't developed, hasn't progressed the way we'd like to see it, the way it's been developed in other countries. Having goalie coaches around full-time at practice to be able to contribute information during games, be able to and contribute these things don't exist. So are we over teaching goalies, or are we just only have this limited amount of time with our goalies? So we need to get our technical coaching in that limited amount of time. And so that was a quote I didn't particularly love, and I'm sure that there are other goalie coaches around Canada saw that. We're probably a little peeved off, because I don't think there's any coach out there who isn't trying to build an all-around goaltender.
You actually changed my mind completely with what you just said compared to where I was going to come at it from before. So thank you for that. I thought that was really nice. Yeah, again, I told you up before we started recording this, we just finished our weeks of summer camp. We've talked before, summer camp is supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to, hopefully you learn a little of goaltending, but it should be fun if you're doing summer camp every day. And on a couple days, I always will run a drill where essentially I am setting every single goalie up to make a diving save at some point, multiple diving saves. One, it gives me a really good opportunity to teach or to talk to the kids about how there's a time to dive and you need to dive sometimes. And there's a time not to dive, because divey goalies eventually will not make saves when a player doesn't immediately shoot it over the diving goalie, right? But there's like a healthy balance of that. But yeah, I think you're entirely right. Like, go watch a team practice for any level. Go watch a team practice. Go look at instruction as a whole. Go look at individual instruction for forwards and D, and look at it for goaltenders. Go look at how a goaltender gets to or is practicing in a team practice, and then go watch how they are practicing in a goalie training session. Yeah, and you're right. The bridge there is made of popsicle sticks, like it's broken. There's nothing there. Yeah. It's something that we always talk about. It's, again, like, this is we've said this so many times on the podcast. I sound like, I know I'm for sure just repeating myself, but I know I'm repeating you too, is that goalie training is the farthest near transfer activity we can do. So near transfer is something that mimics the requisite skills that you need to perform in a competition. So goalie training, since we are on the ice taking shots, making saves, is really close to the sport of being a goal in game, but it's still very far because we have, one, maybe two, maybe three shooters. We have no defenders, et cetera, et cetera. You see my point. I've talked about this a lot. So, team practice is the bridge. And I wrote a master's thesis about team practice. You can also read that online if you want to read 100 pages on hockey practice. Yeah, it's tough. Like, it's really, really hard. And, you're right. You have to jam in a whole bunch of technical stuff because you watch 45 minutes of flow drills and a goalie doesn't do anything. They're sliding around. They're not square. They're not in their angle. They're not resetting. They have 4 shots at once. And I don't want to blame coaches. I never, ever, ever want to blame coaches. I am once again saying that we are in a bad structure, and other countries have passed us because their structure is better.
And they're more adaptable. I think that's the biggest thing. They're more adaptable, and because their oversight or their, control is more powerful, when they say, hey, this is how we're going to run our practices, and our research shows that this is more beneficial, we need to start doing this, it's done. It's agreed upon. Versus, if USA Hockey said, they have all these different things. They have the ADM, the ATOM model, all these things, but it doesn't necessarily have to be followed. And I've spoken to this thing, and I'm still trying to navigate this because, not being highly involved in minor hockey for the first time, I've had parents say, oh, this organization doesn't run the ATOM model. So they don't follow they're part of USA Hockey, but they don't follow this specific model. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know you could do that. That's just, I just thought everyone did it. But I think we can move on for that point. And, do I think that if every organization paid a full-time goalie coach to be there, would I think that would help? Yes. But again, that investment has to be there. And that comes down to the cost. It's hard. One thing,
cost is already super high. So
true. But
it could be lower.
Yeah, it could be lower. However, one thing I did really like and I agreed upon is Marty Baron said, and I was quote here, where the development path of Canadian juniors doesn't allow enough time for goalies to really mature. And that is something I really, really agree with. So if you're listening and you're from the United States or somewhere in Europe, you're not as familiar with Canadian major junior hockey. It's the highest level of junior hockey that you can play, and as of right now, that can play without going to NCAA college. And it's ages 16 to 21. So basically, what Hockey Canada would prefer is the best players in Canada go and play major juniors, so WHL, OHL, QMJHL, sometime between the ages of 16 and 21, meaning between those ages, those 5 years, you better be good enough for the NHL at that point, or else you're going to go to U Sports. And U Sports is really good, and both you and I like U Sports. However, it doesn't get the respect it deserves at this moment.
Thank you.
And so it's not something that people like. A lot of athletes will be like, yeah, I'm going to go to U Sports, the way that athletes want to go to NCAA Division One. So if we compare that to the USA Hockey model, where USA Hockey has their development path, they have their program for their best players, but essentially they want you to play either Tier 1 junior, which is USHL, or Tier 2, which is NAHL, or some of the other different tiers of leagues, but they want you to go to college, meaning you can play from 16 to 21, and then from 21 to 25 or 26, you have another 4 years to develop. And then when we look at the European model has their goalies, they can all play pro in their home countries, which is
home club that they played
their home club
3-on-3.
Yeah, or just any country, or in the European Union, almost any country without being an import for as long as they want until they get good, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, hey, this guy's been pretty solid. We say this again, Bobrovsky, picked up out of the middle of nowhere at a very low league.
The Russian third league out of Novo Kudnensk. I always get this wrong. No, I think it's metal. I'm gonna look at it.
Yeah, whatever. No, but however, if Bobrovsky wasn't have picked up, he would have played and probably developed and continued to develop and would have gone to the KHL and probably been picked up at some point then. If Bobrovsky was in Canada and he was playing Tier 3 junior, so Junior B, it is unlikely that he would have had an open route to development, because he had that clock is ticking significantly faster for goalies that choose to go the major junior route.
And let's use Bobrovsky as a case study. I'm on Elite Prospects. Shout out Elite Prospects, proud partner of our research group. So thank you so much.
Sponsor the pod. I actually would really like Elite Prospects, I suppose. So I can get their premium status, because sometimes I want to actually see the stats of the games.
Shout out EP, everyone there who supports our research. Thank you. Sergei Bobrovsky, Jamie, played for a team called Metalurg Novo Kuznetsk. So that was right. Shout out to me. Where is Sergei Bobrovsky from? He's from Novo Kuznetsk. Okay, so he's played. So shockingly, he played for his hometown club. Plays for the Russian third league, then he plays in the Russian top league, back to the Russian third league, some more Russian top league, a little more Russian third league, and then he's in the World Juniors. That's a pretty good place to play. Whereupon he then plays 2 years in the KHL before coming over to Philly. As well, I want to get this right, but I'm pretty sure he was 23, right? So you have a 23-year-old coming over who has played, to varying degrees, 5 years of professional hockey.
It's 5 years of development against players that are, to relate it to North America, at the very least, East Coast to AHL to NHL caliber.
Yeah, right? And it's like, what an opportunity. And again, we compare it to what we have currently set up in Canada and what we have in Canada right now. And this is just a fact, not for debate. This is not, well. No, is we have a number of private businesses who are tasked with developing our goaltenders, and they have an interest in developing the goaltenders. So let's not misplace that. But you know what I mean? At Hockey Canada, we were essentially saying, okay, team that relies on sales of tickets and this and that to develop our players, you're going to be in charge of that. Now, what does that incentivize, Jamie? Does it incentivize playing the 16-year-old 40 games, or does it incentivize playing the 20-year-old 45 games? Which one does it incentivize?
Exactly.
Right? And so there's again, right? There's, like I said, I played U Sports myself. I did not come from the CHL, but a number of really great goaltenders who I played against did, and went on to have pro careers afterwards, or came back from pro careers. I remember showing up. We played at Western one game, and I look over there, and I'm like, is that Peter Delmas on the other side of the ice? And it was Peter Delmas on the other side of the ice. It's the second round Colorado on traffic.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, that guy's better than I am. But you know what I mean? Like their job, if you're, let's say you're drafted to the Ottawa 67s, your job as the GM and the head coach of the Ottawa 67s is to win hockey games, is to go win the OHL championship and go win the Memorial Cup. It is to not develop your 17-year-old backup goalie.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a few years back, Ottawa did have their 17-year-old backup goalie drafted. He played 19 games. I don't think anyone, you and I, again, anyone we talked to in the hockey development world would be like, what would be really good if a goalie got 19 games at age 17.
Yeah.
Right? Like, would anyone say that? Seriously.
No. I really like what you said there is with our systems, North America systems, is we have a bunch of private businesses that are tasked to make prospects. And it's more of like, you do the work. If you have the money, you can pay for it consistently. And once you get good, and thank you, you're ours. And then we'll do it. Versus the other systems where the top teams have financial investments, those organizations have investments, there's incentive for them to create high caliber players, where the incentive for the private business, which is what we do on the side. So this is not our incentive. Our incentives is to create good players so that we can keep getting more players, to keep our doors open. And that's just business. That's the way it operates. But it's tough because, Hockey Canada isn't truly tasked with that development. It's a bunch of private people that sometimes don't even fly under a radar or an umbrella of Hockey Canada, other than their coaches having certifications so that we can go on the ice and with those players that are using Hockey Canada or using USA Hockey.
There are Canadian Hockey League teams, and I know this is slowly changing, but it's still as of the 2020s, there are Canadian Hockey League teams that do not have a goalie coach on their ice with them for weeks at a time. Each team will have a goalie coach. There's no debate of that.
Yes.
But their goalies will go weeks without having their goalie coach present because it's not a model that is financially realistic for that goalie coach to survive.
And that brings us into Finland and Sweden. One thing that they do rely on heavily is they do rely on volunteers. However, they do make sure that they educate the volunteers. And I think that's really important because even now, we rely on volunteers. And one of the things I'm doing with Fox in the development model is I'm having multiple seminars. One of the seminars is, if you're watching this on the 1st, is on the 4th. Actually, I might even post that Zoom link out if you want to join to watch. But it's an open place for goalies, parents, and assistant coaches and stuff to understand how can you support your goalies, or you want to be a goalie coach. What else can I learn? How's the best way to support my goalie? And that included, I've filmed a ton of drills. These are just drills to do at the start of practice. If there's no goalie coach there and you're an assistant coach, how can you set it up so that your goalie is getting some skating, so your goalie is getting some tracking? You don't have to be an expert goalie coach, but what to look for is your goalie turning his shoulder too far one side and try making saves behind him. Okay, let's encourage our goalies to try to make saves in front because here's why. And it's just a little bit of information that hopefully goes a long way. So by the time that the goalie coach gets on with us at Fox is once a week for teams, and then once a week and then the second ice session that week was developmental ice, there's a little bit of coaching. And the things that we said, and that feedback is consistent and can carry on throughout our organization. And that is a big factor there, is that consistency in coaching and the consistency in the type of coaching and the verbiage that the kids are getting.
Yeah. And again, so it's a thing where we have inconsistent development at the minor hockey level. We have inconsistent development at the junior level, right? Obviously Jamie and I, we exist as private coaches, but I know this has happened to you because I know goalies you work with, but you'll work with goalies in the summer, for example. And again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that you and I are the authority on goaltending coaching, right? I have nothing to say that you and I are the best goalie coaches at all. I like to think that we try to take a reasonable approach that suits the people we work with. And
we might try the hardest though. We'll give us ours. We try pretty hard.
A lot of effort.
We do try our best.
But how many goalies have you had? Especially let's look at older ones that are maybe coming out of minor hockey into junior hockey, where you've worked with them for a while and they go off to their junior team, and the communication from their junior team and their junior goalie coach, maybe not even have a goalie coach sometimes, but their junior coaching staff to some capacity completely goes against stuff that you've worked on building.
Yeah,
and their goalie
all the time. But one thing I like to do is my responsibility as a coach. And yes, I know like time is valuable, but I care a lot about these athletes. Is I make sure that first thing I do is I ask the goalies, send me your goalie coach's number. I call the goalie coach, talk to them, and I say, hey, if so-and-so is ever struggling or has questions, or if there's something that they say like, hey, I don't get this, or this is different, I'm going to call me or I'll call you, because I want to talk, because I want to make sure that we're on the same page, or at the very least, we find a way to articulate and help get buy-in so that this goalie can play the best for your team. And then it benefits both parties, because I want them to be successful. All three parties. It works best because they're my goalie and it looks good as me as a private coach. The goalie coach, the team is happy because their team's winning, and my goalie's happy because they're playing well. And that's all of that we want. We just want the best. But again, like, I can't tell you how many times that I've had a goalie, go to a different team. It's like, you must stay tight and compact when sliding in a butterfly, which is something I don't agree with.
No, I'd like to talk about that right now. No, that is something that is, you get to grind your gears. That's my grinding gears. I'm interrupting all this to say the whole thing that's wrong with Canadian hockey, the reason that Canadian hockey goalies, should have been a 30-second YouTube video from TSN. All they needed to say was, do we still teach blocking sliding butterflies? ? There's a time to use it.
There is.
There's a time.
There is a time.
It is, you cannot see the
yeah,
and you think the shot is going somewhere.
Or you're coming back from an extended position into a tight position.
Yes. Those are really, there's probably other circumstances, but the number of Canadian Hockey League goalies who slide on backdoor one-timers, on 2-on-1s, with their hands glued to their hips.
Yeah.
Why? What are we? What? Yeah. You want to? Everyone is okay. Is everyone? Now I'm losing it. I'm losing the plot. It's the end of the episode. I'm losing it. Everyone always says Canadian goalies are too
really
not athletic. Yeah. Do they just mean because they slide compact? Because if that's what they're saying, it turns out I've just agreed the whole time. Right? Like, yeah, and it's not universal. Like, you know what I mean? Let's look at someone like Stuart Skinner, your future Canadian starting goalie for the Four Nations Cup or whatever. Potentially starting goalie. It's probably going to be Hayden Hill or Benning. I don't know. It's toss up. They're all. I would say they're all. Bennington.
I think they're all pretty like
they're pretty similar. They play very differently across each other, but they're similar overall capacity. They're very good goalies. But like, even like who I'd say Skinner, who I would describe of the three to be the most like kind of blocky of a goalie, even him, like he's constantly like extending and attacking pucks, just like isn't as good of a skater as, I don't know, the Russian league goalies, so he doesn't look as athletic. Like, you know what I mean? He's also bigger than them. I don't know. Shape.
Yeah.
Moral of the story is like, you should have aggressive hands, in tight. They should be smothering the puck. In mid-distance, they should be active so that they can take away the angle to the top corner. And then far away, I don't care. Pucks on the blue line, hold your hands at your hips. I don't really care.
We should, we haven't done in a while. We should go have a full-on Grind My Gears episode. So if you're still listening after our long rant, let us know in the comments what hot takes you have, and then we will talk about those hot takes, and we'll have a full-on episode about that. And then Ben and I will just get we'll have blood pressure cuffs on, and we'll see who gets heart rate gets to hypertensive first.
Okay, last thing, back to the video, and last thing that is briefly mentioned, is just like the cost. And again, I think I know I already went on my soapbox about how costs are really high because we make them really high by the way that we've structured our systems, right? And I would like to give full credit to the Hockey Canada development team here. So 100% credit. I've said this before in the podcast. When I was starting my grad school, I reached out to the development people at Hockey Canada. They were so kind to offer me their time and their approaches and information from them. So again, big shout out to the Hockey Canada people. They were from the development side. They were awesome. They have wanted to make changes for a long time. It's hard. So one proposed change was eliminating regular season games and turning it into a tournament system. So you practice for 2 weeks and then you play basically a mini tournament every second weekend. So that means every other weekend you don't have travel for hockey. And then, only once a month, like every 3, game weekends, you're the host center for that mini tournament. You know what I mean? So you're at home. But just like eliminating the Thursday night game that's an hour and a half away for a 12-year-old. Now, I know there's not always many of those, but like something, then again, you can watch this on YouTube from the Hockey Canada people themselves. What they've said for a long time is we play too many games, we don't practice enough, we professionalize our kids too early. Those things are all objectively true. They're all things that don't exist in other systems that do stuff better, right? USA Hockey doesn't do that. They're receiving crazy pushback on the developmental stuff. We had Steve Thompson on, and Steve is amazing. Like, what a thoughtful and brilliant person. And, he runs into roadblocks with the things that he wants to try and push all the time. And his research team that he works alongside does too, right? There's stuff that just won't happen because there's too much pushback, even though it's probably the right thing to do. And so the reason costs are so high is, because you're buying top of the line equipment for your 8-year-old, and then you're driving 200 ice sessions a year for your 8-year-old. And I love that. If your 8-year-old loves hockey, please, please, please support them loving hockey, because that's beautiful. That's wonderful. And I love that. But we can systematically do it better. Or systemically do it better. And I want people to see that I promise you that a different system wouldn't hurt the development of your kids. In the development of players. In fact, it's probably the opposite. In fact, you might find a Jamie Phillips who got into being a goalie at 12 years old instead of 7, right? Like, I'm on my sentimental soapbox here. And there's no way I was listening to this one at the end. So
no, they've turned this off an hour ago.
They heard my first rant and they said, we're done with this guy. Again, so we're thankful everyone who listens to Goalie Science. Everyone likes to make fun of a podcast of 2 friends because, you can just talk offline. But I'm always really happy that I get to do this with Jamie, because Jamie's been one of my best friends for a long time. My training partner, a role model for me growing up, as someone a year older than me, playing in the same system that we did for a little bit. But, like, Jamie was successful despite the system, not because of it.
Yes, but I also benefited from private coaching.
Yeah, of course you did.
But I had to. But we also that was
household too, right?
Like, that was the system that we had. But no, I do appreciate that. You know what? Let's wrap it up. You're still listening. Hey, thanks for listening. If you would like Ben and I to speak at your hockey organization, I think that's something we probably could do. I think that'd be actually. Don't know why we just don't do that. We should. You can do it online. That would be something we definitely be down to. We haven't mentioned it. Patreon, it's there. Actually, Patreon sent me an email and saying that they're gonna raise the percentage that they take per subscription, so I have to raise the price. So if you're listening, it's still $10. It's gonna be $10 till the end of September, and after that, I gotta raise it.
Dang, Patreon.
So sign up because Patreon is just they need the money too. I guess times are tough.
Yeah. Either way. Thank you everyone for listening. This is, as you can tell, this is one of the things that I'm the most passionate about, system level development. It's what I spend my whole life doing. So, big sigh. Yeah. One day.